All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast. It's been a long time since you last heard from me, and I'm excited to be back on the show with some awesome people. We got Taylor, we got Guy, and we got Ryan with a Kinder Coffee Lab roasting company here in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves? Tell me who you are and what role you guys have with this business.
Hi, I'm Taylor. I deal with most things operations, whether that's sourcing the beans, making sure that our deliveries are on time, that the correct beans are going to the correct places, and also organizing our staff schedules.
Awesome.
I'm Ryan. I'm kind of the brand manager, the creative. So all the design and the website and the stickers and the visual and a lot of the written copy too. The brand stuff.
Nice.
Everything that looks and sounds good. Function and form.
That's awesome.
Yes. Which means I'm worthless. My name is Guy, and one of the owners of Kinder with these two wonderful guys. And my role is kind of big picture stuff, and then just trying to help plug in wherever I can. I'm also a photographer, and so I take a lot of photos as well, and I kind of help oversee a lot of the photo and video that happen inside the brand as well. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, Guy, are you kind of the idea guy a little bit behind the company?
I think often that's the role that I end up kind of playing, but there are lots of really, really good ideas that happen all the time that never get actualized. I think if you walked into some restaurant and you started polling people about like ideas they have for businesses or whatever, you're going to think of how many incredible ideas are probably just sitting there, like in people's minds. So like having the ideas, just such a small little piece of it, and you really need help, lots and lots of help executing. So I enjoy the role that I play. It's kind of how I'm wired. But the fact that we have Taylor who can do so much of that, like heavy lifting relating to, all right, well, that's an idea. How do we actually make that happen now? And then, okay, well, what does that look like? And how do people interact with it? Without those things, ideas would just be stuck somewhere, wherever ideas live.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think having all three of you guys together really show the strength of having a team with people who have different strengths and can really make an idea happen. Speaking of ideas, Kinder Coffee Lab was once probably an idea in somebody's head. How did this happen? Where did this come from? What was the motivation behind starting a coffee roasting company?
I worked at a coffee shop 12, 13 years ago, a long time ago. I worked at a coffee shop in Minneapolis in the North Loop, and I absolutely loved it. It's called Corner Coffee. It's run by one of my favorite people, just a really, really neat dude named Scott Wooler. And anyway, I worked there at that coffee shop. They did coffee well, they did culture well, they did community well. And so I really fell in love, not just with like drinking coffee, but like kind of what coffee represented. As a barista, my favorite thing was seeing a car pull up and knowing whose car that belonged to and having their drink ready for them when they walked in. In a small local coffee shop environment, you kind of have there's that fun relationship that kind of gets built there. So I got hooked from that moment. And then, as we have partnered on some other things and have just been working together now for a long time, it's kind of just been in our vernacular of like, well, when we do the coffee shop, I've owned some URLs relating to coffee for us for a long time. And this past year, we were thinking pretty seriously and exploring a couple of coffee shops, starting a couple of coffee shops. We were pretty deep in that. And then with COVID and just the economy changing and so much of our world changing, we just kind of realized, like, what if we actually pivoted that energy and that time away from a coffee shop? Because it just didn't. 2020 was not a great time to start a coffee shop, which required people to show up someplace. But a coffee roaster that could still care about quality and experience and community but actually ship a product straight to people's front doors, that seemed like a perfect solution in between. We want to be in the coffee space doing something really fun and really exciting, and also let's meet people's needs by shipping something really good to their door. So it's kind of a pivot away from coffee shop into coffee roaster.
That's awesome. It sounds like 2020 was a really big pivot year for a lot of companies, and unfortunately some companies didn't make it, but it's really cool to hear that a startup like you guys is making it. On that note of pivoting and trying to get with the market, the circumstances, what were some of the biggest challenges with starting Kinder Coffee Labs? I know you mentioned it sounds like kind of started like an idea as a shop, kind of like storefront at first, but then you guys went to subscription / online ordering.
Yep.
Was there any other challenges or big things that you guys didn't anticipate besides that?
I think one of the challenges when you're starting any kind of business is just the sheer amount of details that go into that. So there's the things that we know and do every single day relating to branding and all of the creative pieces that go into that. Our day job is that we work at and run a creative agency in St. Cloud. So like some of that, like there's a lot of work there, but we have a system and a team kind of built for that. But then this is really where I think Taylor kind of jumped in head first here with all of his operation stuff was, all right, we need to source bags, and those bags are specific dimensions and they need to be designed, and then we need to source all of our beans and what kind of machinery we're going to use and what do we want our boxes to look like, and just all of that stuff. It just takes a lot of time. It should take a lot of time. It doesn't have to. You can just go to Uline and purchase like the first box you see and not, and that basically be it. But we really care about the brand experience. We want people to like love when that box shows up. And so there was stuff to think about and stuff to plan. And so just the sheer amount of details for that was maybe overwhelming or just big. It just was big. Taylor, did I miss anything there? Or is there anything that you could add to that?
No, the first thing that came to my mind was a lot of our goals or desires about opening up a coffee shop was connection with people and being face to face with them. And then having to pivot from having this idea of a coffee shop and being in front of people to now we have a business that isn't in front of people. And how do we make that same connection or a similar connection? Right. And communicating well with people that we don't get to see face to face was probably one of the other hurdles that we had to figure out. Yeah. E-commerce is different. Selling a cup of coffee in person is a lot different than selling a bag of beans online to
who knows
a name somewhere. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So just learning how to communicate our brand effectively and meeting the needs of our people without actually getting to know them face to face was a hurdle.
Yeah. And like you can do all the planning in the world,
right?
But until you start actually building the thing, you don't know what to expect. I think that's true of any business, right? At least in the design world. And so we're building this e-commerce, which I've never done before. Right. We've done lots of websites, but e-commerce was a big, well, specifically a subscription platform. Mm-hmm. And so you run into these unexpected challenges like we wanted to do this founders membership where you can buy up front a year of coffee a month, like as well as a bunch of other like cool goodies and stuff. But then we found out that, for instance, like if some normal subscriber goes in and wants to change their order on their own dashboard, all of a sudden they could switch it to a founder subscription and get a year of coffee. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like figuring out a lot of those technical challenges, which we've really borne for a podcast. So I won't go into all of it.
No, I think there's value in hearing the challenges. Because like I said, I've seen businesses thrive and I've seen businesses struggle this year. And I think being able to navigate those challenges is really valuable. And one thing that I think is unique too is for, decades, we're used to business as a face-to-face transaction. And of course, that has been changing a little bit over the past, few years, 10 years with, things like Amazon, things online. But this year is really what has forced the hand. And I know, Taylor, you mentioned that having that connection is still important. I think as human beings, I think it's important. And I think you guys really have done a good job at pivoting to the online model, but also staying connected because your guys' social media really engages people and helps people feel connected and feel appreciated as customers as well. And I know you guys do some email updates too with the Coffee Academy, because as some of you may know, that coffee is a big learning experience. It's like a lifelong thing, which is kind of cool about it. And you guys are taking people on that journey who are at different places in that experience of um, coffee just isn't coffee. There's a lot to it that you can learn and a lot that you can experience within. I think you guys do a good job at helping people feel connected and part of that journey.
Thanks.
So I know that you kind of mentioned going back to that connection thing. Was there something, if you were to tell a business owner today, if they had an idea, any like single piece of advice? I know it's a really broad question because there's all kinds of different businesses on how to make it. Because you guys have mentioned that you are partners with a few other companies too that you have started and I've had success with. Is there any advice that you would give people who might have an idea and they feel passionate about it and they want to make it happen? Anything that you guys would say in particular?
I mean, I think for me, and I'll let you guys speak to it, but kind of what I was saying before and getting at is you kind of have to love to learn and not treat those setbacks as really demoralizing, which for us artists are the natural pessimistic bent, and you get all emo about that stuff. But actually turning it into like challenges and expect to always be learning new stuff, and man, you just keep growing your skill set and growing as a person through that. So
one of the things that I like to tell people when they're thinking about starting a business is that you need to spend a little bit of money. It makes it real, because it's really easy to have an idea for something and to write it all down and to think through all that stuff. And you have to do that. And it's really, really good. And Google is your friend, right? When you have an idea, spend an obscene amount of time researching that idea. Is anyone else doing it? Are they being successful? Did someone try it and they weren't successful? Like, all of that is information that you're going to need to know. Your competitors, what do they look like? What does their, how is their business going to be different than yours? How are you going to differentiate yourself from them? There's a lot that you need to think about and know there. But if it just stays there, it will always feel like this much bigger thing. But if you can figure out something small to spend money on, I always encourage people to do it. And the key word there is small, because I think one of two things is easy. It just, you never actually take it anywhere. You never invest in that idea, and it just stays this little thing that you're kind of kicking, this little can that you're kicking down the road forever. Or people are like, this is the next giant thing. This is going to be a Fortune 500 company. I'm going to take out all of the debt I possibly can. And then they get crippled. The business is crippled because it's just trying to make this debt payment every month. So when you're ready to go, find something that you can spend a little bit of money on, and you use that as almost like a litmus test. I'm not saying this is the right dollar amount, but just so I have one. Let's say it's $1,000. When you spend that $1,000, I mean, the truth of the matter is that if the number is 1,000, like, if that $1,000 doesn't return any sort of value, like, it won't cripple you for the rest of your life. Like, you'll recover from losing that $1,000. And that's kind of a cheap way to even say, like, you know what, I'm going to try this idea to spend $1,000. But once you spend that $1,000, like, how did it feel? Did the thing that you purchased, did it advance the idea a little bit? Did it help you get some clarity? Did you say to yourself, ooh, actually, I probably spent 80% of that all right, but the 20% of that I realized I didn't need to spend, right? Like, it's the action of that spending that actually helps you think through some of the stuff that may kind of feels squishy in the ether. It puts some body to that. without it being like so detrimental long term that, oh man, it is going to take me a decade to recover from this. And then you just, once you do that, and if it works, if the litmus test comes back positive, all right, so then spend a little bit more money. And maybe the next chunk is 5,000, right? Still not going to cripple you for the rest of your life. It would hurt a lot more to lose that 5,000, but it helps you take a step forward. And then if it's all systems going, you're like, man, the $1,000 was great. The $5,000 was great. Let's figure out what do we really need to do this. And then you figure out how to raise that capital. Maybe it's coming from yourself. Maybe you're going to take on an investor. Maybe you'll do a Kickstarter or something. But I'm always in favor of taking these little steps forward just to see how it feels spending money on the idea. And you might really quickly realize like, oh yeah, this is not actually what I want to do. And maybe you're out $1,000 rather than if you had gone to the bank early. And so that was a little long, and I'm sorry, but it's I think it's an important thing to do.
No, I think it's valuable information. So, so going to the coffee, Kinder Coffee, you talked about researching, learning, seeing what other people are doing. I know there's a few other roasters in central Minnesota area. What makes you guys different? What did you feel that you guys had to offer to the community, the St. Cloud area, that was different? What are you bringing to the table?
I think maybe before we jump into what makes us different, one of the things that we're excited about is that there are people that are doing coffee in central Minnesota. Like, like this is it's not as developed of a coffee culture as like the metro is, or for sure other states. And, but there are people here that are doing good coffee. Like there are places you can go to buy a good cup of coffee, and there are good roasters in town. So we're just kind of joining that thing. Like there are for sure things that make us different, like in any business environment. But we're just excited that we get to actually join what is happening here already. But do you want to maybe what are some of the things that make us different?
As far as I'm aware, we're the only ones in central Minnesota with a subscription membership. The convenience of not having to think about your coffee when you go to the grocery store, or when it's going to show up, being able to just always have that coming every month is what makes us different. I'm not aware of any other ones in central Minnesota that have subscription. Anything else?
I mean, the beans are really, really good.
They're really, really good.
They're fresh. Since we can deliver them to you, we can get them to you days after it's roasted, which is, you really taste the difference when you have 2 cups next to each other with different freshnesses. So I'd say that's a big one that people really vocalize tasting the difference that good beans and good coffee makes.
I think one of the little things that is also different is that we've kind of invested in Kinder Coffee or the coffee school, all the online stuff. Like we want to build a little bit bigger of a community in central Minnesota around learning the coffee industry and learning how to drink coffee better and how to think about it better and what are some of the things that you can do to take steps forward. So, we've kind of invested in some of that infrastructure and time, maybe in a different kind of way. For sure.
No, I think you guys are really bringing that opportunity to Minnesota of bringing that coffee culture. I think we've been a little bit behind with the metro, with the third wave, what's termed as the kind of the new coffee culture that's now in America. Part of sharing a little bit about me and my experience with coffee, when I wasn't living in the Chicago area for a while, most of you guys know this, but my listeners don't. That's where I became a barista for the first time. That's really where I got taught about coffee and learning about what craft coffee is and the different nuances between coffee, how to brew it, different roasts, different origins. It opened up this whole new world for me. So when I came back to Minnesota, it was just kind of Caribou and Starbucks. And a lot of it was kind of the milk, sugared up drinks. And I couldn't really find a lot of just good coffee. If you were to drink coffee alone, be like, this is a good cup of coffee. And having the love and passion that I took from Chicago, I actually started roasting my own beans at home because I felt like there was nothing that could compare. And so when you guys came along and started doing this, I was like, yes, thank you so much. Now I don't have to work so hard at just getting my single moment every morning to get me like started and hyped up for my day. And you guys are just making it a lot easier of bringing good quality product, a little community to my doorstep through the mail. And I think you guys are doing an awesome job with that. So just so everybody knows, they're not paying me to say this. I'm just a coffee guy who loves coffee, and they make some good stuff. So if you guys haven't yet, you should check them out. I'll put some information in the show notes on the episode details for you guys to see what they have. And it sounds like you guys are doing samples still, right?
We are. Yep. Free samples.
That's awesome. So if you guys are just want to dip your feet in the water, get some good coffee, they have some free samples for you to check them out, and then gets delivered right to your door. So tell me a little bit about the Kinder name too.
Isn't the way the podcast thing works where like you say like, hey, when you head over to their website, you plug in this code and let them know that I sent you, that kind of thing? Isn't that what we do?
Well, yeah, of course.
So then should we get them a code or something?
Yeah.
All right, here it is, guys. Kinder Coffee Company is going to give you a discount code for your first bag of beans. You can go to Kinder Coffee Lab website. You can add whatever you want to your cart, and you can add Modern Man as a discount code to get 20% off your first month subscription. That's a great deal. And my recommendation is the Papua New Guinea or the Wobegon roast, which is a Colombian bean. They're both so smooth, so clean. I could sip on it all day. And it's locally roasted, guys. It's fresh, and it's well done with the Bellwether machine. It is green roasting. It's good for the environment. So go ahead and support them. And again, Modern Man is your discount code at the checkout for 20% off your first month subscription. All right, back to the podcast.
Oh, and so you had said about the name, right?
Yeah.
That's this guy.
Kinder Coffee Lab. Yeah. What was your specific question about the name? Just how it came to be, or what does it mean?
Yeah. Why Kinder? What does it mean? Where did it come from?
Yeah. I mean, when we were workshopping names, and I think we tried Kindly Coffee. I think we did Kindred Coffee maybe too. But Kinder just seems straightforward, and rather than trying to be too fancy or cutesy, Kinder just made a lot of sense. Again, like we want to capture the spirit of coffee and community. Like it's one of the products that actually has community around it. You know, every brand wants to say they're community based. Coffee is amazing because it actually has that built in, and you see that. So Kinder captures that spirit. One of the first questions we got is it Kinder or Kinder? And that's one of those like things you weigh, like, are we worried about that? But Kinder kind of has a nice feel to it anyway. And so we're fine if people mispronounce it at first, and then we can teach them that it's Kinder as they start to hear more about the brand. Yeah, so that's kind of how the name came about. We just, when we said it, it kind of stuck and felt right. Yeah, and then the logo. So if you've seen it, it's got a fox and a hare and a bunny. And the idea is coffee's one of those things where you end up sometimes across the table from someone you least expected. I mean, coffee has that neat way of connecting people. And so how do you represent that in a single logo? You can't show like two people with opposing views or anything. And so in the animal kingdom, it's kind of easy. You have these sort of like dichotomy or whatever. So I tried to sound smart with that word. Was that close? Nailed it. You know what I'm saying. These sort of rivals in the animal kingdom, but then you see them together playing, happy, Kinder. So that's kind of where the brand.
Coffee brings people together.
I agree. I think that's one of the great things about coffee. One of the shops I worked at was in a college town across from a Catholic church. So we would have all kinds of people come in, and there'd be a bar next door, and in that bar was a studio. So we would have people who play music that come in. We would have our Sunday church people. We would have the young crowd and everything in between. And it was so cool of all these connections you can make, even if you're a different place in life, different views. A lot of people can come together over a cup of coffee.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
One question, well, I guess kind of going on the kinder note is um, people who are kind of into the coffee world can be seen as snobs. So you don't want to be snobby, right? You didn't name it snobby coffee for that reason.
Right.
Yeah.
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 I mean, third wave coffee, which you referenced earlier, is the kind of where our company kind of fits pretty firmly inside of this third wave of coffee. A lot of the brands that are kind of inside of that they come across as a little bit snooty. Coffee is similar to wine in that the higher you go in it, it just takes a lot of information to know and understand. And sometimes that causes some like haughtiness and some snootiness. The more that you know, well, that means that someone else doesn't know that, and I'm kind of superior for knowing that. So it's kind of something that's sadly built into this kind of like third wave coffee culture. And we have just decided that we don't want that to be true of us. We also we're not at the end of this journey anyway, so it doesn't make any sense to be snooty about this thing because we all have so much that we can learn about coffee as well. And I just don't understand, like, even as a business, these third wave coffee roasters who choose snootiness and they kind of look down on people who put cream in their coffee. And it's like, well, if you ask any of those people, they also started once upon a time drinking dark roast with cream in it. And it's like, there's no way to start the journey, really. Like, no one wakes up one morning having never had coffee before thinking to themselves, like, you know, that thing, like, that tastes kind of weird. That's going to be my new favorite drink. I'm going to know everything about it. It's this slow, gradual process. And so we want to just meet people where they're at on it. So we always tell people, drink it how you like it. If you put cream in it, great. If you put sugar in it, great. But if you want to learn a little bit more about coffee, you can join Taylor at Kinder Coffee School and just take one step forward. Today, you could learn about how grinding your beans fresh will give you a much better cup of coffee. And then from there, like, what kind of grinders. And so there's stuff to learn for sure. And if you want to come on that journey, if you want to take a step forward in your coffee journey, we would love to join you in that and even help facilitate that. But wherever you're at, like, if you're enjoying your cup of coffee, if it's a thing that you do with your friends or that first date or whatever it is, like, we just want to be a part of that. And we're honored that people wake up in the morning and they push go on whatever their coffee maker is. And they started like hanging out with us. Like, that's like an honor and something that seems so weird to be snooty about. So we're trying to build that into our brand and I mean, into the coffee community too. So.
Yeah. As I mentioned before, you guys are very just open to wherever you are on your coffee journey. Come do it with you guys. And you guys do that very well. Tell me a little bit more about your roasting process.
Yeah, what specifically?
Well, I know you guys have a unique roasting process.
Sure.
What else are you asking about?
Just like why, like, maybe I was thinking more along the lines of like why we choose what roasts and like our beans, and there's just a lot that goes into
Are you
roasting.
asking about the Bellwether machine?
Yeah, are you asking about our machine? That's more along the lines. So I can give you a quick overview. Bellwether is a company out of Silicon Valley. They are a technology company first that decided to get into coffee and do something completely different than's ever been done in coffee. They took this big, robust, giant process of gas and ventilation systems and this like artsy feeling niche that no one can like ever reach, and made it into a science, and took, I think, what we believe is a very actually straightforward process and put it into a machine. I think the kind of thing that we buy into is that coffee is an art and something that we strive to kind of create our own out of. But or our own way out of, but in reality, it's actually a science. It's heat, it's temperature, time, and chemistry, essentially.
Consistency.
And consistency.
Yeah.
And this really intelligent group of people made it into an electric machine that creates zero emissions and recycles its heat really efficiently, so it costs less to run than a refrigerator.
And it's electric, not gas.
And it's electric, not gas. And I think the most important and most valuable thing they did was create consistency. We know that we get the same profile every single time, and that human error doesn't really exist. When we fine tune the roast profile that we want, we get that tomorrow, and we get it the next day, and we get it the next day. So our customers actually get the same bean that they ordered every single time.
Yeah. So what you're saying is it's also kinder for the environment.
It is.
So with it being a zero emission machine, coffee roasting actually is a highly a process just with a lot of emissions. And this machine, Taylor said it, so besides the fact that it's a really tight system, but it also recaptures energy and puts it back into the bean. So another technology where this is true of, there are probably others that did it first, but the Toyota Prius, when you break a Prius, and now I'm sure it's all electric cars, there's energy that builds up in like the rotors, like from the brake pads, and they recapture some of that energy that's being built up into those tires, into those wheels, and puts it back into the battery. So it's not energy that's just exiting and leaving. That energy actually goes back into the thing, which is the same is true with this machine. It captures the heat and the steam that is coming out of this natural egg product and puts it back into itself, drastically reducing the amount of energy it actually takes to to produce that product, and then filters that so that we have a zero emission product. It's pretty neat. The name of the company, if you want to look them up more, is it's called Bellwether Coffee. A bellwether is a sign of things to come. So I think it's kind of a neat name for them that they picked. That they think that this is the future of coffee roasting. We happen to agree with them, which is why we invested in them and in that technology. But I think there is a greater likelihood that a decade from now we have more electric roasters than the gas roasters. We've seen that in so many other technologies where the first thing that comes is like the acceptance is really, really slow of it, but then the tidal wave that just comes after that. I mean, we're seeing that right now with electric cars, and the fact that Tesla is still alive is kind of fascinating to me. Usually the ones that are first struggle, but think of all of these major car companies now are all releasing electric cars, and most of them are talking about how they already have an end date for the combustion engine in their vehicles. So we think that Bellwether is very similar. This coffee roaster is similar to that, in that the natural gas machine that requires tons and tons of labor and a lot more space and ventilation, and has lots and lots of emissions. We think that's probably a thing of the past, and it's a matter of time before this very efficient, friendly, kind machine kind of takes over. We're machine, I think, number 60. So we jumped on pretty quick, and they're wonderful to work with.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Our contact, his name is San. So if you call Bellwether, ask for San. He's the best.
Nice. Is there anybody else in St. Cloud that has a machine like this?
I think there's one or two others in the state of Minnesota. Yeah, I mean, there's
not many.
Yeah, there's not many in the country, so there's let alone any here. It's a really fun looking machine. If your listeners are ever curious, they can swing by and say hi. We'll show it to them.
That's awesome.
And it's not just a smart machine; it's pretty, and we love stuff. We love stuff like that. It's a beautiful combination of form and function. Truth be told, it's a really beautiful machine. And then when you get the outer shell off, you're like, oh wow, this is really, really smart.
That's awesome. It sounds like you guys have a really advanced, unique thing going on with the future of coffee, which is really cool to see, especially for a town that is traditionally a little bit behind in the coffee culture. Next thing I was kind of wondering about for you guys, I would like to share with the audience is, what do you think the future is for Kinder Coffee Labs? Anything you guys are hoping to have done in the next 5 years, the next year?
Yeah.
Yes.
So when we
Let our idea guy.
Yeah.
So, as we said earlier, when we jumped into being a coffee roaster, it was because we were pretty deep into the idea of coffee shops. And we had a couple of locations that we were already looking at when we pivoted here. And we're back now to considering coffee shops, just as things start moving towards opening up. And, if we were to do that, we would have, our business model would be to heavily focus on drive-through, just so that interaction can stay safe, and it's also really efficient and nice for consumers. So we're thinking about some coffee shops in a couple different locations right now. One of the things that we're thinking about, we're thinking about K-Cups. We're thinking about K-Cups. K-Cup, and we haven't made any decisions yet, but we're just thinking about it. Inside of a traditional third wave coffee roaster, there isn't room for a K-Cup because there just isn't for a lot of reasons. But we've tried to build a brand that says, drink it how you like it. And if you want to take one step further along in your coffee journey, this is how you can do it. And I think that we maybe can do that. One of the things that we get asked all the time is like, or people just tell us like, I'd love to buy your coffee, but I don't even have a coffee pot anymore. And that's because Keurig has seriously dominated the market. And so is there a way that we can take the thing that we love, which is really good, fresh roasted coffee shipped to your door? Can we do that inside of a K-Cup? The fact that it's a ground product inside the cup means that its shelf life is shortened, or the freshness is shortened. But a traditional K-Cup that people are purchasing could be months and months and months old. And so if we're still roasting on a Thursday and then grinding and putting it into pots that are compostable and eco-friendly, and we are still shipping them out the next day, and you're drinking coffee from a K-Cup on Monday that was only done 3 days ago, like that's still so much better than the K-Cups that the vast majority of people are purchasing. There is a convenience to K-Cups that is undeniable, and every single coffee snob that I know has a dirty little secret, and that's that every once in a while they microwave a cup of cold coffee, or they make a K-Cup or something. Everyone has their dirty little secret. But we just think that maybe there's a way for our brand to do K-Cups in a really responsible kind of way that's still striving for the best possible quality inside of this market. Because there's so many people, seriously, I think it's the question I get the most frequently is just like, but when can I get it in a K-Cup? And so we're toying with that idea. So coffee shops, maybe some K-Cups, but we won't do either of those things if it means that we have to take a step backwards in the quality of the bean that we're sourcing, or how we're getting that coffee to people, or the community that's built up around this brand. It's really fun. We love hearing from people. We love hearing from people about how they are drinking their coffee and where they're putting their stickers. And so if some of these things that we're thinking about to advance the brand and grow it, if those take away from that thing, we will not do them, because we love this thing that we have. And so if anything, we're just trying to think about how do we take this thing that we have and how do we let more people experience that thing.
Got it, Keurig. I'm going to admit it. It's my dirty secret. Hey, and if there's a way, to make it that you can still get the fresh product, I would use it even more.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So I think it's good as a business to keep evolving, keep having ideas, but still holding on to certain visions like responsibility and community. I think that's really good that you guys are doing that. And I'm really excited to see what's happening in the future with you guys. One of the things I wanted to talk about is, I don't know what I'm going to name this episode, but maybe it'll be Coffee in Business. I previously had an episode called Beer in Business with Eric with Mighty Axe Hops. And unfortunately, rest in peace, 2020 was not good to them, and they are out of business. And it makes me so sad. But I'm just going to challenge my listeners as a call to action that I think for business and to move on with their economy, I think staying local and staying in your community and doing business in your community is super important. And I just want to tell everybody, Kinder Coffee Labs, hey, that's a great place to start. If you want to check them out, sounds like you'll be getting a deal at the end of the episode.
The show notes.
That's right, in the show notes. So, and part of this podcast is it's kind of a men's podcast. Women listening to it too, but masculinity is kind of the defining kind of theme in this show, and discovering what is masculinity and journeying on what it means to be a man. And some of those things is doing good for others, making yourself better for others, and doing good for your community. So the way I always close the show is asking you guys, is there anything you guys are challenging yourself with, either personally, as a business, or on any level of what you're doing to challenge yourself to do better for yourself, for your others around you, to become a better man?
You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to speak in general terms, maybe not super specific. I think I've personally felt like discipline or consistency in my life has helped me along that journey of masculinity, and in playing that role as a man in my household or in my group of friends, coworkers, in my business. I think there's, in such inconsistent and unreliable times, having the discipline in your life and being consistent has been super helpful for me. I think as a man, I'm called to be that stable force in those groups that I'm in. And I think for me, it was specifically for me, I guess, the discipline of waking up in the morning and reading and working out was how I started it. And that kind of like actually took over the rest of my life. As I started to have that consistency in my life, it was actually easier to be a consistent role model in my kids' lives, or a consistent partner in my wife's life. It felt like my roots actually got deeper, and I was more stable to be able to handle the instability of these times, or the instability that happens in most families. I would say most families have seasons in their life that they struggle, or seasons in their life when they're really, really good. And I think remaining consistent and being disciplined in that has been super helpful for me.
I think the only way that I kind of know how to answer that is just with my faith being important to me, and specifically that I want to listen and obey Jesus, and that means that I parent in different kinds of ways, and I try to be a husband in different kinds of ways, and a team leader in different kinds of ways. And so some of those things, just practically as they've walked out, is trying to be much more faithful with my family, in leading them to faith in Jesus and what that looks like. And then personally, in the last year, I've tried to make my fitness and my health much more important, an importance. It's easy when you're busy and all that stuff just to not think about all that. And but this past year, I've tried to be much more disciplined in all of that, in time with my family, relating to encouraging them in faith, and then just taking care of myself better.
He's lost almost 40 pounds.
That is awesome, man.
I think for me, it's learning to serve better. I talked about the artist stereotypes before, and they're all true. Artist musicians are just naturally introspective, thinking about myself all the time. That's why you write good songs if you're a musician, and just recognizing my need to be more outward focused. So how do I serve my wife, and how do I serve these guys, and even this business has been a good chance to, and I don't, at least I feel it. I have such a ways to go, but like going in and roasting, and doing spontaneous things where usually I have my plans in my head that I want to get done, but how can I go out of my way to do things for these guys and for my wife and kids? And I think there's like kind of a natural macho, like I want to be the powerful, respected person. But like you said, faith-wise, like Jesus came to serve, not to be served. And so how can I do that better? And have a long ways to go, but that's kind of become hopefully an anchor, North Star.
That's some rich stuff, guys. I really appreciate you sharing that. And kind of like coffee, I think it's a lifelong journey, and we never arrive, but it's a journey worth taking. And I think part of the podcast is I always ask that question because I want to have other men hear this and be motivated and inspired to be the best men that they can be, and to develop themselves mentally, spiritually, physically too, all the aspects, but not just for themselves, but for those around them, for their families, and then also ultimately their community, to make this world a better place. And one of the best ways to help yourself stay disciplined, motivated, to tackle a day is starting with a good cup of coffee.
Nice.
So on that note, I think we'll kind of leave it at that. I really appreciate you guys. I appreciate what you're doing, the wisdom you gave with the business, and just your personal wisdom for life. And maybe we'll do something again in the future. If not, I want all you guys to go ahead and check them out. They're on, where can we find you guys?
kindercoffeelab.com or Instagram, Facebook, /kindercoffeelab.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'll put all those things in the show notes for you guys. And thanks again for tuning in for another episode of the Modern Man Essentials podcast. Stay manly, everybody.
Thanks, Jerry.
See you later.
Bye, guys.
Hey guys, thanks again for tuning into today's episode. If you've been liking the podcast, or you specifically like this show, please go onto iTunes or whatever podcast platform you use and give us some good reviews. If you'd like to hear some specific topics on the show itself, please connect with me at modernmanpodcast.com, modernmanpodcast.com. You can also search for us and connect with me on social through the Modern Man Facebook group for the guys, and then also like our page on Facebook too. If you liked it, share it with somebody else, and thanks again for tuning in.